The first thing that struck me when I went through your answers was you're the second person, Canon, to actually, when the question said, "Tell me about yourself," you're the second person to actually start in about your family, right? And I find that so interesting to think about because, everybody else, when I said, "Tell me about yourself," and it's split. I need to get more women to answer the survey, so it is largely men. And so I think that is where this part of this comes from. But when that question came up, just about everybody else started right into their business, what they do, whether it's for themselves or someone else. They started into, here's who I am professionally, right? And you and one other person, Anita, started about your family. So, tell me about that. What is it about that when I ask, tell me about yourself, that it wasn't really I guess it is about you because you're a husband and a father, but it wasn't, I was a soccer player, which is going to be cool to hear about, or I'm an entrepreneur. It was, I'm a husband and I'm a dad.
Yeah. Well, I think,
Hey, does that that definitely defines you, right? I mean, that's,
yeah, I think so, right? So that's where I'm grounded. Um,
ah, okay.
so everything else that I do, um, as passionate and as eagerly as I might pursue it, it's grounded in my family. So, part of my story to go on the entrepreneur side, one of the three main reasons when I was putting this thing together and saying, what are you passionate about and what are you actually going to go do about it? When Denny was born, I mean, there was a huge factor that just because I'm grounded in my family, I knew that I wanted to be a stakeholder in her future and not just talk about it,
Mm,
right? So, I don't know, and maybe I'm a little bit too extreme, but I feel like, I have some missions on this planet that I need to get done. But if the only thing that I actually accomplish and see through is make sure that um, I set up my daughter and my wife for something better, then I think I've led a good life because there's so many things that go into to setting that up for her.
right. Right.
That may be a little maybe a little more big picture than what you were looking for. But
No. I think it's great. I mean, it's it's when you think about the reason people do things the way they do, or why they do them. Everyone has these whys, and clearly, for a lot of people that are husbands and family, a lot of people that is their drive. But I think what's interesting about what you might have been saying there is that it is those things, but yet it sounds like that's led into some of the decisions you've made to do the things you do. So I think the other interesting thing about your answers was, so where was it? There was a piece where you made that comment about tying everything in, and it was, yeah, I see it. So I asked which one factor motivates you professionally, and you actually said money. You said other. You didn't just choose money because money was one of the choices. You actually said other, and you mentioned money, but then you said, but really the security of knowing my family is set. I'm curious, is that part of why you decided to go the entrepreneurial route and to fulfill some passion behind the legacy you want to leave? What's the tie-in there, you think?
yeah, so I'm I think you'd be hard pressed to find someone that says if you could earn more money, would you choose not to? Right? I don't think
Right.
someone would say no. But I am, I feel a pretty humble guy. So money for me is a tool to, secure a future. It's a tool to give freedom. Um, it's not the end all be all, right?
Right.
So it's a tool to get to the end state, which is, security for me and my family and for others if I can provide it. Um,
So it's not need to own the Lamborghini and the private jet and
no,
all
no,
these
no. In fact,
things.
my dream car, I had my dream car for a minute, and then I went on deployment, and I left my poor then girlfriend to deal with my Toyota Tundra in downtown Baltimore, where she'd have to move it. And I deployed over the holidays, so there was snow and all sorts of stuff. So she would have to move it, at least twice a week so that the fuel plows could come through. And when I came home, the truck was gone, which, I don't blame her for. So,
Sure.
yeah, no. So
So
for
it's more
me,
about this idea of it, what it can create for you and the legacy that you're going to leave these folks with.
that's right. And then the other part of your question was, did I see that going the entrepreneurial route was potentially a means to more money
Yes.
as a tool? Um, that is certainly a possibility. The job I left, um, I was making plenty of money, and I got to work from home, which that's a whole nother conversation, right? So
Yeah, but just quickly, that was a corporate job working for someone else, correct?
that's right. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
that's right. And it was a startup. I was number 12 in the door,
Okay.
and I left when we were at somewhere around 120. But I got to work from home, and that's another conversation. People think that some people might think that working from home is a freedom. I would actually, in my experience, disagree a little bit because my boss knows that my laptop is right there, and if I need to do something, he can just call me. Uh,
I see what
so
you're saying. Okay. So it's
yeah,
not that it's not a flexibility of schedule. It's that you're always connected when
that's right.
you're at home. And we're gonna bounce around this conversation, so don't worry about that, or I hope it doesn't bother you. But I'm just curious, real quick, while you're going through this thought process of this company that you were at and moving over to the entrepreneurial side, how much is flexibility a driver for you as well? It looked like, I think you said that was the second most important factor to you was flexibility.
Yeah. I mean, I really my daughter's 20 months old right now, and I want to be able to structure my time such that I can spend the maximum amount of time with her. If it's not the job, it's not my daughter, it's not working out, and my wife. I'm going to say family.
Of course.
Um, I really have much time for it right now, so I got to
Right.
structure my time and make sure I get it done. So yeah,
Now, but
flexibility is
now,
great.
Canon, so one might ask, if you were in a startup before,
Mhm.
that probably came with some flexibility. I get that you feel that it wasn't as much because the laptop was there, but yet you were working from home and there's not this person seeing what you're doing every second. So some of the flexibility came into that. So is there more flexibility now as a business owner than employee number 12, or do you feel like it's less flexibility now or same or?
I actually feel like it's less.
Okay.
I went the wrong direction on that. Went the wrong direction. I've actually, it's a conscious effort when I'm doing anything else. If I'm hanging out with family, if I'm working out, if I'm messing around in the yard, it's a conscious effort to not be thinking about the business because it's always there,
Right.
always.
So while you may have flexibility, you could, you're on this call with me, right? No one told you couldn't do this in the middle of the day.
right.
You have flexibility in some ways, but that flexibility is tampered because there's this business, that's this other thing that's always pulling on you and your needs and things like that.
That's right.
And so that wasn't really part of the decision of, hey, I'm employee number 12. I'm going to go to start this business called Inflection Learning. That was not really part of the decision.
Well, I think, naively it might have been.
Okay,
There
good
are a whole
point.
bunch of realities about being the CEO of a business that I was unaware of. And my dream, my goals never included being a CEO. And it's less fun right now than I thought it would have been
Right. Right.
for different circumstances. I mean, you're familiar with my circumstances.
Sure.
I went from the ability when we first started the company, I was heavy into the product, which I loved. It's the whole reason I started the company. And then funding becomes an issue. And all of a sudden, my full-time job is raising money. And to be honest, it became a lot less fun for me. It's been really stressful for
Absolutely.
6 months now.
And you've done a great job with it, I should say. You know, I know it's stressful, and you may not feel it, but you've done a great job with it. You've raised multiple rounds. You're in the middle of another one right now. And, you know, a lot of people don't realize how difficult that can be. So that's superbly. And so that's probably just weighing on you all the time as well. And so you've got all that sort of weighing you down. Well, let's do this. Let me ask an off question. You said you weren't really aware of what it was really going to be like.
Right.
You had been at a startup, but you still weren't, you know, doesn't sound like a founder or co-founder. So you didn't have all that pressure on top of you. what, you know, this is all about career choices, right? So what could you have done between being an employee, even though at a startup, but still an employee, you know, getting a paycheck per se, to going entrepreneur? What could you have done differently to sort of uncover what this was really going to be like? Or could you, or was it really just all about you had to go this route? There was no other way to really experience how difficult some of this was going to be.
So I finished the genesis of what I wanted to do. One of the contributing factors was I graduated from grad school as a data scientist in May of 18. I was with my company until March of 19, doing this on the side. And in that period, you know, I'm still getting a paycheck, everything was good. But I was reading a ton of books, and all the books that you should read, right? So I think it's Eric Ries wrote the Lean Startup.
Yep.
Then the Lean Playbook came after that, and the One Piece Marketing Plan. You know, I'm reading all the books, as well as the books on my topic specifically. I had no idea, right? Intellectually, those books give you some insight, but there is no substitution that
for actually doing it.
And I think you and I talked about this. So I had a buddy who's a special forces guy in the Army. He was on my last deployment. He was the director of the theater over there. And he came home, really smart guy, went to Harvard Business School, and he had a VC come in and say, I will never invest in a first-time entrepreneur.
Right.
Right? Because why would I pay for him to learn all the lessons that I know he has?
Absolutely.
Let somebody else do that. I'll invest in him second time up. And when Tyler, that's his name, when Tyler told me that, intellectually it kind of resonated. But man, I understand it intimately now.
Right.
To be sure, there is too much to learn to get the full scope in the classroom.
And these books didn't do it. There was, you know, it was good information, but it wasn't, you know, it still was no, it's kind of like studying theory versus actual application, I'm guessing is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, I'm curious, was any part of it, these books didn't truly come out and say what the dirty side of being an entrepreneur was. I'm not trying to lead you anywhere, but that is coming from my own experience. I've read a ton of entrepreneurial books too. Yeah. And a lot of them are overly honest about how ugly it can be. I mean, they might mention it, but it doesn't really talk about how ugly it can get.
I agree with you. You know, they'll have a sentence in there every now and then, like, you know, this is going to be hard, you know, A, B, and C. But it's very difficult to convey that message through text to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Yeah, and so with that, I would say, you know, you were number 12 in an early stage startup, so you probably got to see a little bit of what that's like, but still, you weren't in those shoes as the founder dealing with all the things that come with that. that fair statement? You're shaking your head. So yeah.
Yeah, very fair. And I look back on the deal that we negotiated when I came in the door. So there was a good amount of responsibility, and he told me, Canon, this is going to be hard. I expect a lot from my people, A, B, and C. But just coming out of again, that was on my last deployment, coming off of that, where there is no downtime, there's no weekends. I was good to go with that, no problem. And Elena, my girlfriend, then turned fiance.
Now wife.
Now wife, yeah, she's been with me the whole time. She was no stranger to the hard work. She was just happy to have me home. But John, the CEO of this last company, he put a lot of responsibility on me, and I remember renegotiating my deal at some point, and I didn't understand. He didn't give me a lot of insight into why that might have been necessary.
Right.
And now I get it. He was trying to bootstrap. He was trying to raise investments, and he needed me to commit and partner with him for some long-term benefits, which he came through. I thought he was a huge jerk at times, and I told him that. But now I get a little bit more of the stress that he was under.
Yep.
And his wife too. His wife, she was an all-star as well. She was an entrepreneur. She shuttered her business to support him on this last. I mean, it's a family affair, to be sure.
Right. It's not, and some of the questions on the survey actually ask, are you married? Which you are, you have kids, you do. And so I've been looking into how much that plays a role into someone's decision to go the entrepreneurial route. Was that ever, and for documentation's sake, Elena, your wife, she has her own business as well. So she's entrepreneurial. So that might skew this question a little bit, but was there ever any part of that either convinced you to go this route or caused you to pause a second to think about going entrepreneurial?
There's a lot of pause.
Yeah.
A lot of pause. And I remember the dinner that we got a babysitter and we went on a date and we talked about it. And I remember the dinner. I remember the table we were sitting at. And she said, "You have to go do this. You just have to." And for different reasons. One of them being, and this was the lesser of the reasons, but one of them being I had run my course at the last company.
Okay.
And it was time to go. But the greater of the reasons was she could tell that this was a mission that I was going to pursue in some shape, form, or fashion. We had just been through an exit, so we had a little bit of money in the bank, enough to provide me the freedom to go do this.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the timing was right from many different perspectives, and so we went. And yeah, Elena's got her own business, and she's gonna have an entirely different experience than I have because we're bootstrapping her business.
Right.
And she'll be post money before she ever has to talk to somebody about raising funds.
Right. Meaning, and just to clarify, in case I ever play this back, that part back, post money, you mean?
She'll have revenue in the door.
Right. Absolutely.
She'll have the first dollar in the door.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that was a deliberate decision because of what you're going through where you have raised early on or no?
Her model is a little bit different, but both of our businesses revolve around the same kind of meta mission, if you will. And that's, the impact of emerging technologies on students, on families, on parenting, on the workplace.
Right.
Right. So her model is more of a platform model, right? You hear McAfee and Bjornson from MIT, they talk about machine platform crowd. I think it was her last book.
Right.
I'm flipping through it right now. So she's going to be with a different business model and a little bit lower scale to start. She's providing a platform the same way that Uber does, right? So the largest taxi company, but they don't own any taxis. Airbnb, with Alibaba, all these companies, they just provide a platform. So that's what she's doing. So it's a little bit easier to bootstrap,
right,
and to get money in the door. Whereas we're trying to tackle a a problem with the education system, which, by the way, as a first-time entrepreneur, there's a little girl right there. That was a heavy weight to pick up.
Sure.
The education system.
Yeah. So I'm going to pivot us a little bit and talk about, the question was, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Your answer was fantastic. And let me share one of the reasons it was so intriguing. You probably aren't surprised that the vast majority of people that have done the survey had these crazy ideas of stuff they wanted to do when they were a kid, and they've not been anywhere close to them professionally. Nowhere close. I mean, nowhere close. We had one gentleman who wanted to be a baseball player. He's now a banker. Just, one wanted to be a psychologist. She now runs hotels. You could maybe tie some traits in, but not the titles of what they wanted to be, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you wanted to be a football player, not American football, by the way. It was more soccer that you play with your foot, not with your hands as much. So, but you wanted to be a soccer player. So talk about that a little bit. You wanted to be a soccer player, and apparently you really were.
Yeah, I was a really good high school player, and I had grandiose dreams. And looking back on it now, my path has been absolutely perfect. But at the time, I thought that I was good enough to play professional ball. I even had an opportunity to go play overseas for a short period of time, and I was loving it. And that's what I thought I wanted to do. My circumstances changed very quickly. When a young man at a scrimmage at was it Texas Christian University, running a little scrimmage here, he decided to take my left knee out from behind, and everything changed.
Right.
And so, at that point, I thought I could still make it. And long story short, I just injured my knee one more time before college, and how far down this path should we go?
Right. Kind of starting to question things at that point. Am I going to just live this life of injuries and be held back by it?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Well, what was it about soccer? I mean, what, you played it as a young child and just wanted to do it?
Yeah, it was, well, now, okay. So recently and I've got, the book Range sitting out there right now. I want to read Range because I'm really interested. I heard this talk between Gladwell and Epstein about the 10,000 hours versus the sampling. And I played a little bit of t-ball, but my mom really shoved me into soccer. And I just so happened to have a proclivity for it. So that was great, and I loved it. I never had any second thoughts about it. I'm just thinking about it now in the context of this talk that I recently heard. But I loved soccer. I loved being a part of the team. With teams within a team, right? So you have a small team. I played left outside midfielder, and so my job was just to run, and I got to touch the ball every now and then. And right, so there were small teams of us midfielders in there. We became a really close-knit group of folks. And you could, I think, thinking back on it now, I was not the captain of the team, but I was always a pretty positive person. And I have an ability which is not always positive, and I've learned this recently as well. I'm very rarely the best at anything, but very rarely will someone outwork me, which is not always a positive. But that made me kind of a reverent leader on the soccer team because no one could outwork me. I wasn't the fastest, and I wasn't the strongest. I didn't have the best skills, but very few people could outwork me. And so I enjoyed taking on that role. That was how I could contribute. That's how I contributed at Pulse 8, the last company. And unfortunately, it's not the way that I contribute, at my company now. I've had to learn a whole new set of skills. And
well, so I got to pause you there. I think is some tie-in, and I'm over here smiling because this is where this question has normally led with folks. So we end up talking about what they wanted to be as a kid, and that most of them did not pursue it. But what I feel like I'm finding in the research is that there's these skills that come out of these early development desires professionally that end up applying just about no matter what you do. So bear with me. Anita wanted to be a psychologist. Not the most common request or desire from a kid, right? But her aunt was apparently a very successful psychologist. She loved being around her and the way she thought and talked, and that just, impacted Anita, and she wanted to be a psychologist. And now, as I joked earlier, she's in the hotel industry. And you think, well, what do the two have to do with anything? Well, psychology is about understanding personalities, right? And things like that. And when you're in the hospitality industry, it's very much about personalities and taking care of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Anita has taken she didn't realize it as much till we had this exact conversation, but you can now take these two sort of seems like disparate things and look at them together and say, well, she's kind of using some of those skills that she wanted to have by being a psychologist. Well, you wanted to be a soccer player, and you've got this desire to build teams. Guess what an entrepreneur does?
Yeah.
Builds teams. You've got this desire or need to outwork everybody. And I heard you say for a second, it may not always be the best thing, right? Because, by the way, I'm the same way. I'll work myself into the ground. People say, "What's your biggest strength?" Well, I'll out hustle everybody. Well, what's your greatest weakness? Well, I'll out hustle everybody. It'll about kill me doing it. So there's this strange tie-in in people's professional choices back to the things they wanted to do when they were a kid, but really the skills and traits that came with wanting to do that. And so here you are today building a team and working like crazy to out hustle everybody.
Yeah.
So it's really intriguing. I had asked on here, what are the worst parts of working for someone? You had said I had to fit into a box, red tape and politics. Did you had other corporate jobs before the startup, I'm guessing, or was that just out of military?
Briefly, I worked for Deloitte and SAIC, a couple other folks, but I was a intelligence contractor.
Got it.
Yeah, doing some short-term stuff.
Okay. So, not a big fan of the of the politics and things like that, and the red tape. Now, the best parts of working for someone else, you said less responsibility, and there was sort of this theme there, if I could ask about it, where, because one of the questions asked is straight out, and you did say yes. If you're an entrepreneur, you ever just thought about going back into the corporate world? Could you just talk about that for a minute? I mean, I think I know the answers because we've built a relationship, but
yeah,
what is it about that's sort of appealing?
Well, there's some amount of security there. So, going back to being grounded in my family and what I want to do while I'm here. There's a lot of security working for someone else, especially a big company that is not in any danger of failing. You're not going to have to renegotiate your package, and you're kind of expecting a certain bump every year.
Right.
There's a lot of security there, and that's super attractive. I'd be lying if I said that I don't entertain it at times, and that doesn't change who I am.
Interesting.
You and I've talked. I've got a book, not a book, but I've got thoughts around the mistakes I've made as an entrepreneur, going back to the point you and I talked about, and you already did this. What is it really like? What's the grind like? And when something changes you weren't expecting, there's no one else. And one of the greatest things I've learned about since I started my own thing was, when you're a part of a company, not when I was number 12, but when Pulse 8 grew to 80 people, and I was leading a couple different teams, we were on Skype. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent a little bit.
No, go ahead.
We were on Skype, and it's the same thing on Slack. So you could argue that the game, when you're working in a remote company, becomes keep your little dot green, right? So that your boss or whoever thinks that you're online, and if you're online, then you must be working. Your dot becomes yellow or clear, and you're dot red, then that's a problem. And that kind of started this time-based value in bigger companies. So, okay, if I don't hit a deadline, but I saw that Canon was online, green, from 8 o'clock in the morning, till 5:30, and then I saw him green at some point in time of night. The guy's working, so maybe something else was wrong. Nobody cares when you're an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you spend 5 minutes or whatever. It's all about
it's value-based
results and value.
Yeah. Yeah. So you shift from an employee being time-based in a lot of instances to value-based. Of course, there are some companies who employees are value-based, but it's just not as common. It's very much, that might be more at the leadership executive level where they're very focused on values and things like that. You said that the security is what's alluring to going back to the quote unquote corporate world. I'm curious though, do you feel like at a high level, either path is more secure? Is being an entrepreneur less secure than the other, or vice versa?
I would not trade regardless of what happens with the business I'm in now, I would not trade the time or the lessons I've learned for anything in the world.
Why?
Because let's jump around a little bit. So you asked me if I thought about going back. I have, only because I'm having a hard time raising funds, and I have to plan, right? So I've got cascading contingencies on what happens based on the chessboard.
Right.
But it doesn't change who I am. So if I go back to a company, I got things I want to do. It doesn't mean that I've lost the mission of my company, right? So there's the mission to bring emerging technology education to students. That's still something I can do. I just can't do it in this medium anymore.
Oh, so good. Keep going.
Yeah. So there's a book I want to write, or at least like a novella that I want to write, based on the lessons I've learned. Just because I go to the office doesn't mean I can't do that. I took a note from your book, something I'm really passionate about, emerging technology and the impacts on parenting. So there's 10,000 books out there about screen time. I don't care about screen time. I care about what insurance companies are going to do when diseases become a thing of the past, but now we're having test tube babies instead of sex. Right, so that's going to change the culture. And what does that mean for us in the future? I love talking about those topics, so I might write a book. Just because there's not one out there that I've seen. So where I work doesn't change who I am. It just changes how I do it.
Canon, so good. Yeah. So let me, I'm going to fire this back at you in a summary, just because I want to lock that moment away in my head and maybe yours too, because that was pure gold. And that's exactly the type of thing I'm trying to get to in this research. Are you being so bold as to say that it doesn't matter the career path, whether employee or entrepreneur, that perhaps it comes down to more that what you want to accomplish and whichever path is the best way to allow you to accomplish that, and that you can accomplish it regardless of the path, right? So I don't have to own the company. I can work in another company. If my passion is to use education to impact children, something like that, I don't have to own the company. I would like to, maybe, but I don't have to. If I had to go another direction, work for someone else, I could still accomplish that mission, that goal in another way.
Yeah, that's very well said. Yeah, I agree.
Wow. Very, very, very cool.